Welcome everyone in. This is our first episode. Again, if you missed the intro, this is Will. This is my buddy from college. We had a radio show in college, which you'll see a portion of here in a second. We are the Bracket Brothers. We'll be getting into this bracket here and having you guys kind of debate some of these with us. And let's do that. Let's get right into it. So let's start with his 81-point game, which again we do have some highlights from right here. And let me pause the music and get into it. Now, if you haven't seen his 81-point game, he was absolutely electric, and the Lakers were actually losing at one point going into this. This was in, I believe, 2015, right?
No, this is 2006.
Oh, 2006. This one was
way back. Yeah. He was still wearing number 8.
Yeah, he was still wearing number 8 for the Lakers. This was Lamar Odom. Luke Walton, I think, was on this team.
Smush Parker, I think, was on that team.
You have the ability to come up with the most random team, like names from teams.
Well, Smush Parker played for the Cavs for a hot second.
You know,
they had a little bit of public beef for a while.
I mean, so just look at the score. Right now, they're down by what? 2-13. They're down by 15 points right now, which is crazy. And you know, Kobe, I don't think even had. I think he had 40 at half.
The other thing I'll say
here, 38
at
that point in the game.
In terms of our bracket, I think this definitely deserves the number 1 seed, just considering that it's the second highest scoring game of all time in NBA history.
No, absolutely. I think that definitely warrants, you know, that portion of this. I mean, and look, that's not that's good. So I mean, they finally take the lead here. I mean, so they were down 15 at one point in the third quarter. They come back. They end up scoring here. He ends up with 81 points on the game. I think an absolute amazing moment in sports, an amazing moment in Kobe's career. Definitely, again, I think the number 1 seed. And I think from all the moments that we picked, which there are many of them, this was not a super easy list to make, mind you. This to me was a clear-cut number 1 seed. I think you're absolutely, you know, hit the nail on the head there. And then the other moment that it's going up against, which again I'll flinch back to the bracket, you've got the Matt Barnes no flinch, which is right here. So Matt Barnes right here on the outside, Kobe defending him, and you'll see it here in a second. Yep. So he tries, if you saw that there, he thinks he's going to get him to flinch.
It gets me every time.
And he didn't. Just stone cold play there. I wonder if they're going to show a replay. Yeah, they did. Yeah, there are arguments that he went to the side of his face.
There was that. Yeah, there was a top view that kind of showed that he was a little off to the side maybe, but I don't know. I think it's still pretty badass. And the thing that also is interesting is that later Kobe and Matt Barnes became teammates and pretty good friends. They did interviews together after Kobe retired, and obviously Matt Barnes does that show, All That Smoke. Which their clips pop up on YouTube, and he's phenomenal. And they seem to have like a really good friendship afterwards. So that definitely, I think, again, speaks to Kobe's character.
No, absolutely. I mean, and normally I think we turn to the chat for an answer on this one. I think it's a pretty clear-cut favorite, so I'm not even going to worry about that. I think that 81-point game easily moves on.
Yeah. I listen, the Matt Barnes moment is pretty iconic, though. But then again, Kobe's iconic. So, you know. I think you got to go with that. And here's the thing. I want to ask you something here. Are we setting up the ground rules? Is the chat going to decide who moves on, or do we just kind of go on the fly here? Do we decide who moves on, or does a combination of all of us decide who moves on by majority? Or
I think it's going to be a combination. Oh, God. All right. Quick moments here.
Oh, you're logged out.
No, all of a sudden it didn't work. So
what's this website?
It's called Challenge. Should be right here.
Seems legit.
A lot of streamers use this for like in tournaments. Okay, here we go.
Got it.
All right, we're back. I think that's a clear-cut 2-0. Submit the score, and the 81-point game was on.
It should be 81-0, right?
There you go. 81-0, exactly. All right, so the next one, we've got the iconic alley-oop to Shaq versus his absolutely filthy dunk on the Nuggets, which I am going to show you guys here. Here is the alley-oop. This was, again, it was Game 7 of the Western Conference Finals with Kobe and Shaq. Absolutely filthy alley-oop. Let's watch. Let's watch here. You see, fourth quarter, 83-79. They make a bucket here. Absolute nail in the coffin. And boom. That's one way to do it. And that's an absolute iconic picture of Shaq. That reaction.
So some background on this, and I did a little research here, but I also vaguely remember it a little bit. I mean, I was 7 at the time. I was kind of starting to get into sports a little bit, but that was the 2000 Western Conference Finals. So this was the beginning of the Shaq-Kobe mini dynasty Lakers that went on to win 3 state championships. So this was at the beginning of that. In this series, Portland was actually down 3-1, and they came back to tie. This was a Game 7. And they actually led by 15 in the fourth quarter as well with 10:28 remaining. So the Lakers had to come back from that deficit, which they did. And then obviously you saw that they were up by a few buckets there, and that one was kind of nail in the coffin. But the reason, this was so iconic was because this kind of was like the beginning of the dynasty. Like this highlight here was just like, when you think of Shaq and Kobe, a lot of people think of this highlight for whatever reason. And
having
this
fun
highlight got
playing
played
the game
over and over again.
Yeah, I mean, and I think to me this just shows, just the elation on Shaquille O'Neal's face when they hit this alley-oop. It just shows how much fun they had playing together before, like you mentioned earlier when you and I were talking, that egos got in the way and stopped them from being an even bigger dynasty. But
yeah, it's I think it's one of the most iconic moments in NBA history, in all honesty.
That highlight is absolutely everywhere. So I'm 100% with you on that. So that's our I believe 4 seed. Yep.
Yeah.
Versus his dunk on the Nuggets, which again I've seen this. I've seen it played over and over and over again. This is one of my favorite dunks of all time. And I think it's a very defining dunk of Kobe's career. Also, mind you, hold on. Let's admire that pass from Robert Horry really quick, because what a pass. He just slings it down behind the back. Boom, on your face.
Right.
I mean,
everybody thinks Kevin Love invented the touchdown pass, or Dwayne Wade did. No, Robert Horry was doing that.
And I got to tell you, this is a pretty hard one for me. I think we felt like of all of our choices, this was going to be one that was a pretty tough choice. I think both are fantastic dunks. Like you said, that Shaq and Kobe was the start of that dynasty, but this was the start of Kobe. Like, this was the start of just like I said, I've seen both these highlights played over and over and over again. I think that both of them are very iconic. So I do want to turn to chat and kind of see what we think, who we think, what we think could move on here. I know I have my favorite. I know you have your favorite, which we'll weigh in here in a minute. But I would be interested if you guys think the Shaq alley-oop is the best one. Type in 1. If you think the dunk on the Nuggets, type in number 2. So let's again 1 in the chat for the alley-oop to Shaq, 2 for the dunk on the Nuggets. And we'll see what comes out here.
I will say also, for some more background here, that dunk against the Nuggets, that's 2003, was a regular season game, but Kobe also did just happen to also have 42. So
yeah, he dropped 42 in that game.
That was a regular season game compared to a postseason game. So my vote to move on would be the Kobe to Shaq. That's just me, though.
I'm with you on that. Amidon does say number 2. He does vote for the long pass and the dunk from Kobe. And I got to be honest, I agree with Amidon. I think for me, that highlight I've seen over and over again. Oh, Nick comes in with the late number 1, so we're split 2-2 right now.
Yeah, we're going to need a tiebreaker.
We're going to need a tiebreaker. So someone's got to vote here, either number 1 or number 2.
I just think, listen, number 2 is a very nice dunk. One of the best dunks of all time. But number 1 was a huge playoff moment and was the start of a dynasty. And it was to move on to
the finals,
the NBA finals. And I just think that's that says it all to me. It's a bigger moment.
I'm getting there. I do agree. I think you've persuaded me. I will say. I think that alley-oop, it does hold a little bit more value. I think the dunk is absolutely ridiculous, but I do think I agree with you on that. So I'm gonna move that one on. I think that's a good call. The next one is super nostalgic to me, and this was a hard to put any lower than 2. I think you and I both looked at this and said the final game 61 couldn't go any lower than 2, and honestly could have been in the running for the number 1 seed here. For those of you that are not maybe big basketball fans or anything like that, Kobe in his final game dropped 61 points. Final game of all. This argument that the Jazz gave it to him, blah blah blah. Dude dropped 61, and he was how old when this happened? This is 2013, so he was probably...
No, 2016.
Oh yeah, I read that wrong.
That's 2016. Yeah, I forget how old he was, but obviously.
I mean, but he just looks like his old self. It's unbelievable.
I don't know. I've heard that conspiracy theory that the Jazz gave us some, but I don't know. Watch the highlights. I think that maybe there's a few buckets that they.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure, but at the same time, like, it's the NBA. They're gonna watch him do it anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's so interesting to me with Kobe because he was 37. Good shot backwards. Mm-hmm. So that's the other interesting thing about Kobe. I mean, he went from playing in this super physical era, when him and Shaq were at their peak. Basketball was like just coming down from that super physical era of Jordan and the Pistons and stuff like that. So he got banged around when he was wearing number 8. I mean, he got in there, he played ball, he hard, things like that. And then, at the end of his career, basketball was soft. Like it is now, in my opinion.
Hand check this, hand check that.
And I mean, and that's the interesting thing about the end of his career. Yeah, they may have given him a couple buckets, but that's basketball in 2016. That was the start. I think it was kind of in the rise of the 3-pointer, and in the rise, I think Steph Curry had maybe just won his first MVP. If I'm correct here.
The year before, 2015.
Yeah, so this was kind of the rise of the 3-ball. So for that conspiracy to be a thing, I don't agree with. But again, just to kind of get through, I want to see the actual end of the game here. 58 points with 14 seconds to go.
Really must have been incredible if you
cool
were
as a cucumber.
Just to see that.
Yeah, I mean, like, this is a game that I absolutely... these seats were going for a lot of money. Like, a lot of money. Guy plays 42 minutes. He shot 50 field goals. 50. 50, Kenny, 50. Entire stadium is on their feet. 60-point game for Kobe in his last game. The Jazz trying to score here. They don't get it. Now, yeah. Yep. And then that pass to end the game again, regardless of it being.
I always forgot he ended with like an assist like that. Wow, yeah. Not bad.
And that's the last play. That was to ice the game too.
Yeah, not too shabby. Making the smart. And they say Kobe wasn't a passer. Say he was selfish.
I mean, again, that's just an absolute. That is an iconic moment that has probably even been further cemented with his death, unfortunately. But absolutely amazing moment. And then something that Will and I actually, believe it or not, learned today when we were kind of doing some of this research was in 2005, I believe. It was a playoff game. No, this was a month before his 81-point game. He ends up outscoring the Mavericks after 3 quarters. So if you look at this graphic right here, Kobe had 62 points, and the Mavs had 61 after 3 quarters. He outscored their team for 3 quarters. He ended the game. They ended up taking him out of the game. And he ends up scoring 62 with 8 boards, 3 steals, didn't have an assist. Like you just said, Kobe, not a passer. 18 of 31 from field goal, 4 of 10 from the 3-point line, 22 of 25 from the free throw line. Ridiculous stat right there, by the way. I mean, just
I don't care what NBA team you're doing that against either. I mean, that is just
that's wild. Impressive. That's wild.
Crazy.
So, I mean, and that, again, that graphic is absolutely mental to me. And like I said, I love that 61-point game, but imagine if they leave him in for the fourth quarter. I mean, his
could he have gotten the century mark?
I don't know if he's scoring 40 in the last
40
quarter,
in a quarter, but
I mean, I think Klay Thompson scored 42
41
in
or
one
37, one of the two.
Yeah, I mean, so that would have been a hell of a quarter.
The Warriors, though, right?
It still would have been. I mean, then a month later he drops 81 because they left him in the fourth quarter. That's pretty crazy. I have my clear-cut winner. I don't know what you think. For me, it would actually be this game.
And the fact that we have a 61-point game where I guess he outscored the entire team through three quarters as a 7 seed, man, that's crazy. I'll go with the final game, though, too. I mean, that's a legacy. That's like the ending of a legacy, the cherry on top, the
icing on the cake to end with that assist.
Whatever analogy you want to throw in there. Yeah, I'll give it to the final game.
That final game, like you mentioned, absolutely cements his legacy, and I think that for me does move on as the 2 seed. So I think that's the right call here.
We got any thoughts in the chat?
Do we have any thoughts in the chat is the question. I don't know why this is making me refresh every time I have to do this.
I dropped my pen.
What do we think, chat? Anyone disagree with his final game?
Do you have a cricket sound effect?
I should get one. There's always a little bit.
See,
of
that's the thing.
Though.
When we did our show, man, I had sound effects like boom, boom, boom.
Well, I am gonna have to set them up.
Some of the bigger podcasts have them, but we're starting off, so
they both agree. So Amidani and Nick agree with that, which is great. So
we're good.
I already know my winner for this one, but I do want to kind of share you guys this. So the last debate here is Kobe Bryant tore his Achilles and made free throws, and then he had the Portland game, which we'll get to in a minute. But let's watch the Achilles.
Another Portland game, by the way, but we'll explain that one.
You can tell that he is struggling.
It's hard for me to even look. It makes me squeamish.
Good word.
I cannot even imagine. Like, I ran cross country in high school, and I ran through a calf injury, and I thought that hurt, but that is nothing.
Tore his Achilles.
Ugh.
So a young Klay Thompson right there, and a young Steph Curry.
After this
young.
free throw, I'm going to be very curious.
Yeah, this was 2013.
Yeah, he had 33, by the way. You could tell he's struggling. Kobe didn't show pain.
He gets to the other end before a foul,
Made him. Lakers might foul.
It's incredible. He just gets out
They're
there.
trying to get Kobe. They're like, get out of there.
Tonight.
So that's option one. Option two is this Portland game. So you can see 8 seconds on the clock. LA down by 3. It's the fourth quarter.
Now, hey, some context. This is the Portland Trailblazers basically need to win this game to advance to the playoffs. If LA wins, they go home.
So, okay.
Like
and LA had already secured, I believe, the playoffs.
2004, sorry.
Yeah. Kerry Payton, by the way. What a shot, by the way.
It's just unbelievable. And the other context that goes along with this is that the guy that he hit the shot over, Ruben Patterson, who played for the Cincinnati Bearcats in college.
Both of our shots.
He called himself the Kobe stopper.
Yeah.
And his teammates would refer to him on occasion as the Kobe stopper. So
I mean, to be
fair, they had a little bit of beef back and forth, but Kobe kind of put it into that discussion there and sent them packing.
To be fair, that was a ridiculous shot to make. Over phenomenal defense.
Oh yeah, you couldn't play any better defense there.
No, you absolutely could not.
The other thing with this game is, and I don't know if you'll show it or not.
I will.
In overtime, he hits the game-winning shot at the buzzer. Right. Sorry to spoil it.
Way to spoil the ending. So that's to send this to overtime, right? Which, again, look at this angle. That's absolutely ridiculous. All right, so then we go to overtime, right? It's double overtime, mind you. So it's double overtime. Lakers down by 2. 1 second left. Gary Payton throwing the ball in again.
Payton to inbound. Bryant for 3.
Bang. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. 2 of those shots, double overtime. For me, it's the Portland game 100%. I love the Achilles tear. I think it inspires a lot of people. But those shots and the way he hit them, especially over a guy like Ruben Patterson that called himself the Kobe stopper, easily to me, it's super iconic. It's the type of player that Kobe is. I got to go with the Portland game.
Now, okay, so I think that this is the toughest matchup,
I agree,
in my opinion, of the first round. I mean, Ruben and Kobe really did have, like, beef for a while, and the context obviously sending them home and that whole thing is pretty astounding. But I don't know any other athlete that tore their Achilles and continued to play. Now, Kobe obviously hit free throws and then, he left the game afterwards, but still he continued to play after that. I mean, that is absolutely astounding. And I don't know. I mean, maybe there's somebody else that has done something similar
Klay Thompson
at
when
some
he tore
point
his
in
ACL
time, but I haven't seen
the
it.
year before. Yeah,
Klay
Thompson tore his ACL and hit his free throws, and he wanted to keep playing.
Oh, was that
last year or the year before?
That was last year? Yeah, you're right. I totally forgot.
Again, for me,
Still.
and we're going to have chat weigh in here, but I think for me that Portland game, just those shots are ridiculous, and I think that's ice cold Kobe right there.
I'm going to go with the Achilles tear because I think that's kind of like his character. It's just the never give up, never give in, never say die mentality, the Mamba mentality.
Nick says the Portland game. What do we think, Ami? We're going to have to that's 2-1 here. See if anyone else wants to weigh in here. I think we're going to have some tough matchups here in round 2, I'll tell you. Portland game, 3-1. Moving on over the Achilles tear.
Right.
This is going to be a tough round. A tough round 2 here. I don't know why it keeps having me refresh this, but it's okay. We might have to find an alternative here moving forward. But Achilles wins 3-1. Oh, no, excuse me. Not the Achilles. This was wrong. 1-3, excuse me. Yep, Portland game. Oh, man.
Now, Portland was
that's the
6th seed there? So that was...
Yeah, that's our first upset. It is. It is. Right. Our first and only upset. So we have some great picks here. We've got the 81-point game versus Shaq alley-oop, and then we've got the final game, 61 versus the Portland game. I think we start with the lower seeds or the lowest this matchup, and then go to the higher matchup.
Okay.
Which
some
is
extended rest.
His final game, 61 versus the Portland game. This is a hard one. This is a really hard one. And let me close out some of these that we're not using anymore while we're here. This is final game. Now now we'll go to that in a minute. We'll get to that in a minute. That's the alley-oop. That doesn't flinch. That's good. All right. So I've got one extra thing pulled up here. This one. Okay. So the final game, I don't know. To me, Tyler Woods won the U.S. Open with a stress fractured leg. Holy shit. That's crazy, actually. So final game 61. I think it was 60. The final game and the Portland game. For me, I have to go with the final game. I think, again, for me, that iconic moment of him pointing to the sky, the final pass to, I believe, Jordan Clarkson to ice that game. To me, it just
also the post game Mamba out.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
I think to me
now even more iconic with the circumstances.
That's the right one.
I'd agree with you. I'd go with the final game. Obviously, both regular season games, but one cements a legacy and one is a tale. It's a little blip of his legacy, but I think the end is kind of
Yeah, I think
cements
we're with it on that one.
cherry on top.
Portland
I
game
think
was
we're gonna
amazing,
go
but
final game.
again, I think we had the final game 61. I would say I think this is actually the least hard of the two. I think for me it's the 81-point game with no question. I think the Shaq alley-oop was a fantastic moment, but it's the second highest scoring game of all time, and he brought the team back to win. Like, to me, I can't not move this 81-point game on. It's amazing.
Well, the argument you can make for the Shaq alley-oop was obviously the playoffs, Western Conference Finals, compared to a regular season game against a really bad Toronto Raptors team. They were not good that year. They had Jalen Rose and maybe Andrea Bargnani. Those are the only two players I can remember on that team.
Are you willing to make that argument?
I am willing to make that argument to make it interesting.
No,
but
I'm not
at
asking
the end of the
about
day,
that. Are you willing to
81
make that
points is
argument?
the second highest scoring game of all time, so I think you do have to go with that.
Okay, if you're not willing to make the argument, then I'm good. And it's not about making it interesting. I want to know if you truly believe that argument is worth making.
I'm just saying, I mean, that's an overtime game right there. That's an overtime matchup,
This is actually 3.
They're close. They're definitely very close.
They're definitely close. The score does not dictate how close that actually is.
Yes.
But I think, again, and we've arrived at, it's a 1 and 2 seed, which, it's not as exciting as I was hoping it would be. But
what were you hoping for?
It's not even what I was hoping for. It's just in some of these brackets we're going to hope for some, upsets and things like that. But I think with a guy who has a legacy like Kobe, these are both fantastic. All of these are fantastic moments. I think the only one that may not deserve to be up here is the no flinch. But, again, there's so many moments we could have picked from. Most of these could have gone either way.
Sure.
And I think that in this case, the 81-point game versus the final game 61. I don't know. I think, again, but you can't go wrong with the way you answer this question. I love the 81-point game. I think it stands for a lot in basketball. I think it carries a lot of weight. However, I have to couple the final point game with the final speech that he had and saying Mamba out. And to me, that's a more iconic moment that the 81-point game will ever be. And I think it holds even more value now that he's gone. Mamba out was on T-shirts. It was on video. It was on clips the day he died. And
LeBron said it. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think for me, that final game and that final moment, which we will play here shortly, it's what takes the cake for me. And I think that's what I have to vote for. What do you think?
Should I give my reasoning, or are we going to play this clip?
Let's play this clip real quick.
Okay.
Guys, it's I can't believe how fast 20 years went by. I mean, this is crazy. This is absolutely crazy.
20 years.
To be standing here at center court with you guys, my teammates behind me, and appreciating all this, the journey that we've been on. We've been through our ups and been through our downs. And I think the most important part is that we all stayed together throughout. I grew up a diehard. Thank you. There's no way that I can thank you enough for that. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you. And what can I say? Mamba out.
Iconic moment. It really is.
Well, here's what I'll say. And I'll obviously echo everything you just said. I mean, I agree with all of that. The one thing I will say is, at least in terms of that speech at the time, I'm sure regardless of him having a 61-point game, it was going to be his last game, and a player like Kobe was going to get a speech no matter what.
Right.
So I will say that it's not to take away anything or anything like that. And don't forget that the 81-point game was the second highest scoring game of all time.
I'm with you on that.
In terms of points, I mean, that, Devin Booker had 70 a few years ago, right?
Yep.
in today's soft NBA compared to the more physical NBA back in the day. To me, it's hard. Man, this is hard. I mean, I'll go back and forth on this, but I'll go with the Kobe 81-point game as mine just because of the NBA historical significance to it. It was obviously organic just the way it happened and how he needed to be that to win that game that night. He needed to do all of that to beat a bad Toronto team at the time, but still, you know.
Well, to be fair, he did have to be that to beat a bad Jazz team. In fact,
true. That's a good point. Okay.
Had the assist to ice the game at the end of the game. Had 2 huge free throws at the end of the game to take the lead. I understand that there's conspiracy theories in that, but I can't shy away from that 61-point game, and the speech just puts even more over the top for me, just because of how iconic. And again, if we're talking about Kobe's moments, I would think about his final game before I would think about the 81-point game. Yeah, I could be like, oh yeah, he scored 81 points in one game. But if I'm thinking about highlights, if I'm thinking about moments, I'm thinking about that. It's Kobe dropping 61, hitting that assist at the end, and Mamba out. That's for me.
I personally think of 81 before that. That's just me, though. I think of 81. Obviously, they're both phenomenal moments, and this matchup is way too tough. I could see either. Well,
chat
winning.
Did weigh in, and the votes did come back for the final game, just so you're aware.
I see one. Do we have any other?
There was 2, actually.
Do anybody else?
There were 2. So I mean, just going with that, coupled with my vote, I think the final.
I'll be happy to concede.
Again, there's not a wrong answer here. There really isn't.
I don't think so either.
But I think we've chosen and found our winner. His final game, 61, is the moment that took it all. Again, I don't think there's a way we could have gone wrong.